I started out this painting a couple years ago and I want to transform it into something else. I don't know, I think it could provide some pretty interesting visual history if I used it as a base for something new. I'm really sick of painting myself, so I asked my mom to pose for the reference. I just studied her face as it moved through my two big studio lights, and I made her hold this piece of cardboard that I painted orange so that it would kick up some warm light onto her face. I made her step forward and back, and I made her tilt her head at very intricate angles until the light fell just right on her face. I ended up with the most perfect reference photo, and I took this photo with this paper shoot camera. I've been using this thing for reference photos for years, and it's designed to emulate the look of film. It's really basic. You just point it and click it, and I find that I end up with some really compelling and atmospheric reference photos. Using reference photos like this helped me think more broadly about color and mood rather than getting too caught up in accuracy. I also did take a backup reference photo with my phone that I can look at later in the process if I want to see a little bit more detail in the highlights or shadows that kind of got blown out in my paper shoot reference photo. Hey, it's a couple days later. What you just watched there was unsponsored. This is genuinely just a product that I use in my process and I like it, so I wanted to share it with you guys. I have since learned that there is an affiliate program and I was accepted. So if I've convinced you to get a paper shoot today, it's the top link in my description. You get 10% off and it gives me some kickback, which helps support me and allows me to keep painting. So let's get back to it. I got a comment on my last video that read, "The bare presentation of your workspace is very refreshing in the sea of aesthetic art vlogs." And maybe that's a read because my content is so homemade, but I took it as a compliment. Comments like this really help me understand what actually connects with an audience. This is the same room that I learned how to paint in. This is the same desk that I learned to paint at. Actually, I think it's an industrial shelving unit, but whatever. I hope that the way that I present my workspace and the way I create makes the idea of a full-time artist feel a little bit more achievable. With this video, I want to lean into that and present you my process as bare as possible. Some of the parts of the process that I normally cut out, I'm gonna keep it in and let me know if it's interesting to you. I'm not particularly prepared for this painting. I haven't done any sketching. I haven't designed a composition. I don't have much of an idea of what this painting is gonna look like at the end, so hopefully that allows me to be a little bit more spontaneous in the process. Creating a new piece for me feels a little bit more approachable when I don't burden myself with the responsibility of creating a spectacular composition. There's only two things that I've put some thought into before I start this painting. One, I'm going to allow myself to experiment with transparent paint and glazing techniques. I never do this because I have an aversion to the surface finish that it creates, but maybe I actually like it, so I'm gonna try it out. This piece is really small for me, and although I want to thoroughly conceive a good painting, right now I'm kind of thinking about it like it's halfway between a study and the normal stuff I do. I want to try out new things and use this painting to learn. And number two, I'm gonna try out a new color relationship. Let's jump to a color wheel because I think that's where I can describe this best. The baseline color relationship I use in all of my paintings revolves around a warm, cool, orange-blue dynamic. In my last painting, I pushed both of these colors closer to green to try out something new. I found in that process that a lot of my colors were neutralizing to an olive color, and I had to reach across the color wheel and use a desaturated pink to cancel out some of the areas that felt too green. With this painting, I want to push my colors in the other direction. The orange I'm gonna nudge a tiny bit to like a warm cadmium red, and I'm gonna push my blue all the way towards a purple. I expect these colors will neutralize to a pinkish gray, so I'm going to be able to problem solve the same way that I did in my last painting, and I'm going to reach across the color wheel and use a really neutral green as a subtle third color whenever things get too pink. And that green is what I'm gonna use to wash over this canvas to create a new base to work on, because the indigo and the reddish orange will really pop on top of it. I still want the old portrait to shine through a little bit, so I'm going to sand down the surface and then I can get painting. Here, I'm mixing up that neutral green base. Since I want this layer to be transparent, I'm gonna be adding a bunch of medium to my paint. I'm gonna try to follow fat over lean as best I can in this process. Fat over lean is a rule in oil painting where paint with a high oil content should be placed over colors with a low oil content. Lean colors are very brittle and they can crack when applied over fat colors during the drying process. The only two things I'm gonna add to my paint is Gamsol, which breaks it down, and linseed oil, which suspends the paint in more oil, making it more smooth, glossy, and transparent. Gamsol does not make your paint more fatty, but linseed oil does. Here's how I understand to tackle this. In my first layer, I'm going to use a medium with low oil content, so I'm going to mix mostly Gamsol into my medium. Every layer on top of that, my medium is going to have more and more linseed oil in it until I'm using pure linseed oil in the final layer. I've also heard that this rule is more like don't put lean over fat, so you don't need to add more oil with every layer, but if you step up to a higher fat percentage, you can't go back. This is my first time experimenting with mixing Gamsol into my paint, so please excuse if I just lectured you with misinformation. The green that I'm toning this canvas with needs to be lean and transparent, so I mixed a lot of Gamsol into the paint, and I was pretty pleased that it gave me the result I wanted. Here I'm doing some palette prep and I'm getting my colors all mixed up for the day. You can see there's a handheld palette at the top of the screen that I'm slowly adding colors to. This process can take between maybe 20 minutes and an hour every day before I paint. Today it took about 30 minutes because I had some palette cleanup to do, but I didn't have to mix too many colors. Although these colors are a little bit foreign to me, it was such a breath of fresh air to use them because I feel like I've been handicapping myself so heavily with my last project. These colors just clicked and it was so immediate. Standardly in my process, when I'm looking for a likeness, I use a gridding technique. I don't have too many problems with this, other than it's a bit of a mechanical procedure. So in this painting, I posed my mom so that her head was at the same angle as the painting, and I built my mom on top of the bone structure that was already established. I had to restructure some of the face in this layer, so for example, I had to push the left eye quite a bit more to the left. I didn't do any sketching, which was maybe a little bit ambitious, but guys, this portrait just clicked. I don't get it. The colors were working. I loved the surface that I was working on. I was a bit hesitant to place her features in a particularly confident way, but it made this whole first layer super atmospheric. I was thinking about larger ideas about structure rather than painting the portrait around her features, and that seems to be a great way for me to approach portraiture. I've described the sensation of a breakthrough day before, and that's the point in a painting where I put the paintbrush down and I try to work on something else, but I can't stop sneaking glances back at my painting because I get so giddy about how it's looking, and that's already happening with this painting. Now I just have to keep the momentum. I'm at the end of my first painting day, and look at all of this good paint that I still have left on my palette. This is a chore that I do every day after I paint. I've just never shown it before. If I left my palette just like this, that would be fine, I guess, but all of these little globs would develop a skin. So I couldn't just dip in my brush and get it full of paint. I would need to puncture the skin and kind of like try to scoop out the paint from inside. When I do this, I found that I struggle to get enough paint on my brush, and the paint inside has thickened so it doesn't spread as easily, and the whole painting process, it just takes twice as long. So I found that it's best to just clean this all up tonight. What I do is I take my palette and I combine light colors into convenience mixtures. This here is a huge glob that I have left over from my last painting, and as you can see, it's developed a really nice skin. All these colors in here, I can mix those all together, and that would create a lovely like neutral reddish beige for future days. Next, all these reds here, I'm gonna mix those together, and I think I'm gonna combine it with this red here. What I do is I just like roll this and see how like the skin is separating from the good paint. Then I can just take this like that and I can discard that right here. But I try my best to go in here and remove all of these dried up flakes of old paint. It can take up to 30 minutes to do this at the end of every day, but it's gonna save you a lot more time in the long run. Hey guys, it's been a week. My bad. I fell horrifically ill. And of course, after my first perfect painting day, my body was immediately like, nope, you can't work on this anymore. But I didn't waste my time. I built a mean heyday farm, but we have to get back to work. Today's objective is to do a second layer of oils. I've decided I want to incorporate my palette into this painting like I did with my painting Jasmine, because I just really like the way it looks. I've also got to fix up some of the anatomy issues I made in the first layer. To do this, I took a work in progress photo of my painting, and I took the reference photo and I threw it into Photoshop right on top of each other, and I kind of toggled between the two, and it really points out all of the issues that I made. I've got to fix her eyes a little bit and the nose, but mainly the whole back of her cranium needs to be flipped to the other side. So I'm gonna mix up all of my colors, and I'm ready to just start flowing with this painting again. The main thought I have for today's session is on overworking. Since I'm going for more of an unfinished look, this painting is in really scarce danger of getting overworked. I think I ended up smoothing out the portrait a bit too much in this layer. The best way for me to explain this is by showing you. The first pass of paint that you take with a brush is uneven and imperfect, and it's full of character. Every time that you readdress that stroke to smooth it out or to push it in a different direction or whatever, you're basically dumbing down that brushstroke to something that's a lot more flat and methodical. This is the core of overworking to me. The more you strive for perfection, you may actually be making your painting less interesting. There's a sweet spot somewhere between a bare canvas and a completed painting that's extraordinarily difficult to find, and it's an artist's job to decide where that line is. I've still got a lot of growing to do, so I know when to make that decision better. Although it maybe got a tiny bit overworked in this session, I kind of traded it for such a strong expression and a pretty good likeness. I found my mom, the person that she is, but maybe layer 1 was a bit more of an interesting painting, you know? The second half of the session, I began incorporating a lot of the design elements that I'd wanted to explore in this piece. If the face is a study in atmosphere, everything around it is going to be a lot more graphic and design-based. The first thing that I blocked in was the biggest elements, like this light blue shape that's branching throughout the painting and the dark shirt. I want to block in the biggest shapes and colors into a painting as soon as I know that they're going to be there. Usually I do this in an acrylic underpainting, but obviously this process is a little different. You've got to do this as soon as possible because big elements are going to inform how you paint smaller elements in a painting. For example, I've seen artists paint a portrait on a white canvas before and they wait until the very end to paint in a black background. And after a month of looking at this painting on a white background, you see it on black and you're like, oh my god, I ruined my painting. And it's like, no, you didn't. Your eyes just have no idea how to look at it yet. If you painted the background black-ish at the beginning of the process, you would have painted the portrait in that context from the beginning. Hey guys, it's been another week. My bad. I've been preparing for today, which is going to be the glazing day. The paint needs to be touch dry for me to be able to do that. So I've just been like waiting a week. But in the meantime, I did some scraping and I did some sketching and I just did more thinking about what this painting is going to look like. My intentions for today is to get like really funky with my paint application and really try something new. Since this painting is so small, I need to keep reminding myself that like this is something that's okay to experiment with and like have a lot of fun, and it's okay if it looks ugly. I'm gonna get all my paint mixed up for this session and I need to get funky. It's time to get funky, guys. Oh honey, did I get funky. I covered the entire surface in a thin layer of linseed oil and did my painting on top of that. This made it so I could blend my marks into an already dry canvas, and oh my god, hallelujah. This is so effortless and makes me wonder why I've been forcing myself to not do this for the past couple years. I still need to experiment a bit more to see if I goon for the surface finish it creates, but I will definitely be exploring different glazing techniques in the future. As a whole, I kind of see myself entering a new stage of the art I'll be making. The past 2 years have been all about me bringing big ideas to life as I pour over every inch of giant canvases. I see my next evolution being more experimental. I've been flooded with inspiration and the urge to create that I haven't felt in years. I feel the urge to explore these ideas in a more free way, on a smaller scale and more frequently. The only time I'm able to see things in my head is when I'm dreaming, and every night when I'm at the edge of sleep, my brain has been keeping me awake for hours and hours, because my mind just opens up and is exploding with visuals and ideas for things I want to create, and it's my favorite part of every single day. And I literally can't sleep because I'm overcome with so much inspiration. If this session is all about me getting funky, I want that to be representative of the artist I want to become. Here we're going to skip to the next day. I'm going to be adding some text to this painting, and I know on a taste level some people just aren't going to like this, but I like words in art if it's done well. I like how Alphonse Mucha does it. I think that Matthew Sorgi adds lettering to his art beautifully. I did it in my painting In My Own World again, and I really liked how it looked there. Oscar Yehu does this really interesting technique where he dry brushes poetry onto his paintings, and then he does a layer of paint to obscure his writing until it's nearly illegible, and I think it looks really cool. I kind of want to try this out, but it's the kind of artistic stamp that he sort of owns, and I'm not sure if I can do that and still feel good about myself. With this painting, I added the words, "I love that I look like you," because that's what this painting has reminded me. She birthed me, and in this painting I kind of birthed her, and our bone structure is so similar that it worked. And I think that it's just a really sweet sentiment to share with someone. I love all of you, so to see parts of you in my eyes or my forehead or cheekbones, I'm just really proud to carry with you literally in my DNA. I think that you're beautiful. Let me show you how beautiful I see you, and thank you for giving some of that beauty to me. One of my favorite compliments is, you guys look so alike, because yes bitch, I love to look like her, and I want to let her know. On to my favorite part of every video, the final debrief. I like it. I think I did a good job. I don't have all the right words right now to deliver a particularly informative self-critique. Give me another week or two and I'll be able to tear this thing apart, but right now it's just like, yeah, that's fierce. I really loved working on top of the old painting. I think that working on the textured oil ground was really interesting. And you may have seen, but I've actually been like prepping 3 new canvases. I've just taken all of the old oil on my palette and I've been trying to build up some like texture and visual history for some new paintings. I'm really sick of painting myself, and I've painted around my family and my friend group like 4 times now, so I thought it would be kind of interesting if I painted some of you guys. If you want to submit some photos for me to choose from, you can email them to talesjackal@gmail.com. I'm looking for a lot of contrast and interesting lighting, and send a couple. I want options. This is not a good reference photo. I don't think that this will make a particularly mature painting, and if you send a photo like that, I'm not going to paint it. This is a good reference photo. But yeah, prints are available of some of my other favorite pieces, and you can buy a paper shoot if you want. Bye!